song when I'm riding my bike, and I swear, like, cars are almost hitting me, like, every day on Delancey, and I'm like, yeah, it doesn't matter. Like, I love that song so much.
Cool.
It's so good. I mean, I love the 10 seconds of silence where I just, like, grip my knees. I'm like, is this going to be over soon? And then the music comes on, and we're like, oh. All of a sudden, we feel free to move.
And then music stops, and then we rock and roll. So.
Yep.
pretty awesome.
Now we're here with
I've always been a little bit more rock and roll than hippy dippy.
Yeah. Rock and roll is another, it's like heat and yoga. It's another lifestyle.
So this woman that we interviewed a couple weeks ago, Katie Sarsone, said that Shiva is the ultimate queer rock star. And I was like, oh, yeah, he's a lot like David Bowie.
I was going to say, I was like,
What if David Bowie was Shiva
Yeah.
at some point?
Well, Giuseppe's here. I'm here. I'm Alexis. And this is Tricia Donegan.
Yeah, part 2. So, yeah, we already enjoyed part 1, season 1, whatever it was. And now we couldn't wait for season 2 to come out. And, yeah, we left it off at you basically discovering
yoga.
Well, did we harmonize? Not on purpose. And
yeah, I'm not doing that.
And so what happens? You discover yoga. Like, how does it go?
How does it go? Like most people, I believe anything my hairdresser says, anything, everything. Suggestions, requests, commands, straight up demands. That was my hairdresser, Wayne. So he quote dragged me to yoga. Like I said, it was hot yoga. I had no idea anything about it. He didn't even tell me it was hot. I put on a big sweatshirt. I put on all the layers, like the long pants underneath the short, all the layers, just like I was going to go play soccer outside. But, and he was this huge guy, tattooed all over the place. So I was like, all right, I'll go. I'll do it with you. And so we show up, and the room is so hot, and it was in Hotlanta. And there was no, they were so strict. And retrospectively, I was like, what was that about? But you could only wear black. Like that's, it was Bikram yoga, because that's what Bikram wore, just black. So we could only wear black. We could only bring white towels. We had no jewelry, no watches. You had to take everything off before you went in the room. There was a drinking fountain in the actual yoga practice room, and no one went for it. There was no water. We didn't know any better. There was no showers.
Oh my gosh.
And it was hot yoga. It was humid in Atlanta. It was not cold outside. And we just did it. Cause we didn't know any better or another way. And so I was just like, Wayne, you are crazy. And he's like, I'm not as crazy. And I'm like, okay, let's see who's the craziest, And so we go in there, and the teacher's just quote, locks the door. And I was like, what's we've got no, for all our jewelry, that we just all took off. I'm like, what? So anyways, but it was so disciplined. And, I really loved the rigidity of the discipline. I was never, a ballerina, and I was always, quote, a little bit jealous of the discipline that I heard that ballerina teachers had.
So intense.
And it was intense, and they did this. And even though soccer was very intense, at one point, we shaved our heels with razors so we wouldn't get, blisters in our cleats, and we used to run with bare feet on the sticks to sharpen and toughen and strengthen our feet. A little bit different. Definitely, than the stories and experiences I've heard from ballerinas.
I don't know. I mean, I've heard some. I passed out my first class of Bikram. I passed out 5 minutes in, the part where you put your arms over your head. I was like, tra-la-la, I'm gonna look hot for my boyfriend. I'm 15, and I did back bend and immediately conked out, and they dragged me out of the room. My best friend, they did
on the floor.
And I was like, where am I?
Really, they got you out? They didn't make you finish?
No,
who is
I
this?
know these merciful teachers. I know they were too annoying. Go lay down over there, and you have to wait till the end. And then my best friend barfed on the floor during a class. Shout out to Mark. On the carpet, It was. I mean, that's intense. Bikram is intense shit.
Well, I just cried. So such a small reaction.
That's interesting because Bikram trained me not to cry.
Oh, wow.
And
wait, so he trained you, so that means
did
that,
not
like,
teach me,
yeah.
but trained me not to cry, not to make,
Why?
not to react.
So that implies that you enjoy the yoga class and then you sort of train to be a teacher, or
His goal, his intention of what he said was, during our training, I will try to steal your peace, so your peace will not get stolen somewhere else when you leave the training and start to teach yourself, so you don't get your peace stolen. Mm-hmm. That is what he had said. I had not really known anything about Bikram the man. I didn't even know it was a person when I first started.
You were like in the restaurant business, and then how did you get from there
I was in the restaurant business, and I was super stressed out. I put a lot of pressure on myself. It wasn't just about a business. I often immerse myself, and it was about creating a community, and not only it was about creating a different kind of community. It was where we all came together to work with each other, and none of us looked alike, and none of us were the same age, and none of us had the same economic background or the ethical background, perhaps, of support.
that is awesome.
And I was just like, what have I gotten myself into that I perhaps cannot sustain, or even, but I'm like, but this is really
so important.
It's really what I was just like. I was like, and so, I'm sitting there with my hairdresser, Wayne, and he's like, go do this yoga. It'll help you. And I'm like, no. That's not cardio. It's not a workout. I need to release some stress. And I need to relax. And he's like, you need to relax. And I'm like, no. I really need to release stress. And he's like, no. And then so I'm back and forth. And he's like, just come with me. And I said, okay.
I'm sure Wayne is looking at you like, oh my God, come on.
Wayne had his own community in Atlanta, and it was a very disciplined he was part of the leather community.
Aww.
And it was a very disciplined community and very inclusive. And there was even leather competitions, and I was like, oh, this is awesome. And what kind of tricks and what kind of things do you need to, and I'm like, I only thought this was for the Miss USA or whatever. And I was like, ooh, this is a competition I want to watch. And so he was just, even though he flew the Confederate flag, and I didn't understand that or relate to that or like it or want it or wanted to, say, no, I'm not even going to let you touch my hair. He really touched my heart in the way that,
change your life.
Changed my life. And just the amount of time I saw him, shine his boots, and the amount of effort and time and pride that he did things with, came above any other kind of feelings I thought I had for him, or I thought I knew best, or what I thought was respect. And so he took me the first day, and he, I think, lasted about 3 weeks after that, but then he left. But I came – it was the hardest thing I'd ever done. I've always gotten away with doing things very physically and gotten away with it, and not only gotten away with it, but been triumphed for it. And I'm not saying I've never not used focus, because, you got to hit a ball in a net, or, there's some focus and determination and discipline there. But there was also a lot of pressure there, and so I needed to find a different way. And so that's when that became, when I opened up the restaurants, and I had put a different kind of pressure on me, because I was like, this is a different community, and no one has done this before, and even Clinton is saying no one's done this before, and so I really needed to find some kind of a release, and so that's when I really started to do Bikram yoga, and I went every day. I was going to get my head on my knee no matter what. And I have no idea what I looked like. I have no idea, but I felt like this was a challenge that was different than any challenge I had experienced before. I really had to go inward and do it myself without a team supporting. And so I really felt like I took yoga, a solo practice, and kind of made it a team sport.
How?
I think that, I use the word team sport or community kind of in the same way.
Yeah.
The thing that really made the restaurants work was not only the quote story and how it happened, but that the community really blended.
Yeah.
And it was
family.
It was everyone was rooting for it. And like I said, like there'd be people that came from outside the perimeter to come in to feel what we were doing, and I didn't really care why they were there, but they would pay $50 for that bowl, and the other family would pay $5, and it all works out. And so I was just like, oh, this community actually does kind of work. And so when I went into I was just like, well, this needs to happen. And I'm going to figure out how and how.
How to make a yoga studio?
How to make this kind of community accessible to us all, and to create a little bit more possibility of joy and power. And
so first thing was to like become a teacher or learn how to be a teacher. Did you fiddle with that idea at the beginning, or?
I'd said, no, I was like, my instructor came to me, Christine Reyes, and she came to me and, I remember like, in that studio, like I said, it was so strict in Atlanta. And when her business partner Jason went to play in the gay games, they only had 2 instructors, and so she was left there by herself. She was like, oh. And so she wanted to practice also. And so she would play a tape of her, and then we would come in the morning. And if you had to be asked to be in the front row, and then once you were asked to be in the front row, you couldn't go anywhere else, no matter how you felt. If you didn't feel good enough to come, then you don't come. You are there. And I was like, oh. And so I was not asked, and not requested or suggested, but commanded to go to the front row. And I was like, okay. Tricia thinks she has no choice again. Yeah. And the front row became my team. And I had to do all those postures myself, but just alone is way too much. And that's when I sort of felt the community and of how strong a community can be. And, the restaurant business, we make great food. We did food like no one else did. We had names like no one else did.
Oh, I bet.
All the tools were in place, but also it was the community that kept it going, and the strength of the community. That people wanted to come and see who was going to be there that night, or who was going to, And that's when it was really that time and 9/11 to me struck me like I will never forget someone's name. Because I do remember, at 9/11, post 9/11, I had just sort of moved here, and we would be practicing and no one really knew each other's names, and we'd be a team and we'd be in line, and then post 9/11, that one dude in the 3rd row, he's not there. And I was like, I don't know what he did. I don't know what his name was. Is he gone? Is he still here? And that's when I chose to, I think it was very important to, not to pry, but to know people's names and to know what they did. And if they wanted to, tell me their dreams and tell me what they wanted and needed. And
yeah, you really see people.
And I've been told like, oh, I can see people's potential and I can feel people's potential. And I just feel we can feel what we all want, and that's all pretty much the same thing. Yeah. No matter who you are, when things end before they should, when people, I remember in New York a lot of people starting to choose to end their lives because they could not, and I'm talking about famous people, celebrities. And the strongest part of any challenge, when people think they have no hope to keep going, it's the community that pulls you in.
Yeah.
And so when a lot of people ask me, how could you teach a yoga that's been created by Bikram Chowdhury, it was very easy for me to separate the man from what he created, but very hard for me, like I said earlier, to separate the community from the yoga. And I tend to connect with community and yoga and blend it together, where I found a lot of teachers or other teachers would just try to connect the yoga. And that's a different kind of thing to perhaps the person, and not make it bigger than that or open it up more. Because when my brother did die, I just got up the next day. I found out on the phone from my sister. I was trying to figure out how to pack and get home. My dad was stuck in India. They couldn't get him home quick enough. And I remember I just woke up the next day and I just walked to my studio, and I walked in because there was nothing else I could think of that would make me feel better. I was supposed to teach, but I just wanted to be a part of my community. I wanted to feel the people that, whether they knew my last name or not, that I could get support from them. And I remember I just walked in and people knew because they knew, and I just walked in pretending like I was going to teach. And then I remember another teacher got on the box, and then I don't know what happened after I left that day. I went home after that, and I just for the first time did not have the capacity to care about my studio or what happened. And so I just got on a plane and left, and I got all these text messages that this person taught, this other person taught, teachers from other studios that were so competitive that we would never, came in and they taught, and they all taught for free. And I didn't even know anything. And so the studio, the community, the yoga continued to happen. And it's just, so I have a challenge of blending things, and
you see that they're not really different. I mean, when I think about community in Buddhism, they say that we must take refuge in the triple gem. There's the practice, there's the person who teaches you the practice, and then there's the sangha, which is the community of people that support you. And that's really what you see in your practice and what you've created, even in Atlanta, even in the restaurant industry. And in a way, me and Giuseppe, we made this podcast to create community as well, because there's so many cues that you can give to somebody on a mat, but there is something much deeper happening between all of us in the room, and you're definitely naming it.
I do. The quote, the longer I live and the more compassion I have for myself and for everyone on this planet, honestly, the more I do feel like we're a little bit more like each other than we're not. Yeah. Even if we battle each other to try to either protect ourselves or to get what we need or what we want. And I do feel that perhaps I so immerse myself in a community or build a community because I have, quote, isolated myself in so many ways and times. And sometimes when you're, I don't want to call myself a leader, but when you have a role that is, quote, separate, sometimes it is quite isolating, no matter what you have. And it tends to, I have a challenge of talking about my challenges, my issues, what I need, what I'm scared about. And so I'm getting a lot better at that.
They've helped you to include others. Do you know, like the trauma of 9/11? It's helped you to see the value of attention and really giving a crap about other people. It's so valuable. I mean, like I said, you remembered my name from 2016. I was like, what the actual frick?
I think it's, mindfulness is, it starts with awareness, and which leads to a healthy mind. It's different. Yeah. It's their stages. And as long as we keep being more mindful, and when I work with the high school, the ninth graders, I'm like, what does mindfulness mean to you? And they all roll their eyes. I'm like, that's not what it means. But let's talk about what that, I've taught my daughter to roll her eyes inside. So no one, Exactly.
Eyes rolled backwards.
Not rolled, but eyes rolled backwards.
You jumped into the ninth graders that you teach, and it's a community that you're cultivating now, but also you were trained in the practice of quote Bikram yoga,
yes.
And I mean, you separate the guy from the system. And I wonder, how you kind of, made the yoga your own. What did you stray away from in Bikram? We've talked a little bit with Matt Remsky about trauma and cults and yoga, and we're part of Ashtanga, which is a little bit culty. Shout out to all the cult Ashtangis.
It's all a good cult.
Yeah. And there's parts that are really healthy, and the wackadoo-ness, it bonds us, but then it can also be kind of abusive at times. And I wonder, where you realized that you had to separate yourself and cultivate your own path.
I don't know if I don't know if it was conscious. I'd like to say it was conscious because that makes me
cooler.
Not necessarily cooler, but more like, hey, this is not the right thing to do. But right before I went to training, you had to get at that point you had to get your teacher's approval to go to training. And I didn't know much about Bikram. Like I said, I didn't even know it was a person. And there was not a lot of talk about it in the studio. And so she told me 3 things. She said, you are not going to teach Bikram how to behave. You are not going to organize the training. And if you are going only to get a certificate, you're not going to immerse yourself in the yoga. You are not going to get to know Bikram, get to know other people. You are going to get a certificate to teach.
Basically, physically be there, do the thing, get out.
That's it. And she even said, if he shits on your face, just smile and say, thank you. And I had no idea what she was talking about. I was like, what? And I was just like, huh. And then I went. And then the first day, I actually had a plane ticket, and it was right post 9/11, actually. I'd moved to New York City in June of 2001. And I'd left for the training in September. So I had a plane ticket, and my dad was like, this is the safest time to fly a plane. Nothing's going to happen. And I was like, I'm not doing it. And so I had a car at that point. And so it was awesome. I drove from New York all the way to California and by myself, which is something I hadn't done. And I made a route where I would go and stop every city and go to a different Bikram yoga studio. And my brother at that point lived in Colorado, so I kind of went a big way and kind of around. And Colorado, the altitude went down on my knees. But anyways, so it was all of a sudden it was this huge journey even before it started. Right. And so I took some time and I went, and I had spent a long time in Colorado with my brother, and it was really awesome to be with Brian right before training. And he it was cute. He told when he first came to the studio, he's like, "Can I take my shirt off?" And I'm like, "Sure, Brian." And he was like, "This is awesome." His digestive system has never worked better. I remember he said he told all his friends to go. But so I showed up at Bikram training, and the first day, I just kept remembering what my instructor said or my studio owner said. And
shit on the face.
I was just like, huh. And so I get in the parking lot, and there's this huge line. And it's so chaotic and so and I'm like, oh, don't organize this. And so. And this was in 2001, where it was really, I would say, wild, wild west. There was no eyes on anyone at that point. So it was really wild, wild west.
Was that sort of like the peak of the Bikram?
I would say 2001 was pretty early. I would say the peak was probably anywhere 2010, 11, 12. It was really. Okay. Even perhaps before that, my studio was bringing in a lot of students. It really was kind of the only thing out there that I knew about, even though there was tons of things out there. But the first day, there's always, first day, I remember very clearly, we were there and, we were just in the first, like we've hit the floor and you turn your head for the first savasana and I just was like, I can't do this. I can't do this. It's so hot. It's so hard. I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't do this. And I've never heard myself say that many times. I can't do this. And for whatever reason, we all got us through. And at the end of that class, Bikram stands up, and at that point there was women that were under 18 there. There was probably a girl who was about 16, 17, and her mother was there also. And her mother looked a little bit more like me. She was tiny, petite, muscular, and her daughter just happened to be very overweight. And that's when Bikram chose to, in front of all of us, ask. There was about 400 of us there. Asked the young woman, the 16-year-old, to bring up her lunch in front of us. And so Bikram chose to take about, an hour to chop up the sandwich in 400 pieces, and then had the little girl in front of her mother, who said nothing, pass out the lunch to all of us, have us eat it in front of her, and said, if anyone sees this girl eat for the next 9 weeks, you're out of here. And that was the first day that Bikram trained me not to cry. And I, to this day, we can talk a lot. There was a lot that went down in that training. There's a lot that I watched and observed and did not do much of anything. But that was the first time that I realized I did not stand up for someone who needed someone to stand up for. And that's always been my quote, go-to, and I don't know if that would have served her, the relationship with her mother, and to actually in a bigger picture right now. Was that my ego saying, like, I needed to help her, or was this a different kind of process? And that was when I started to not feel my gut and not trust myself perhaps anymore, even though that was day one. I learned that dialogue specifically, precisely. I've got a good memory. I had it down. There was nothing I was going to do to get kicked out of that training. I wanted a certificate. I wanted to teach. Did I think I was going to teach it a different way? Not consciously. Did I understand that I thought there was a better way than what he was doing? Absolutely. I do not believe that excellence comes out of humiliation. I think it has. But I do think there's a better way. So that is Bikram yoga. We used to do it with bright lights, mirrors, the tiniest clothing you could have, and watch yourself learn your process in a mirror while you're doing it. I got back to the city, managed a studio. I opened up a studio before I played with my own money.
So how were you kind of holding the abusive instructions of Bikram as you opened up your own studio?
The instructions.
It just sounds like so. You're saying, "Oh, I quit feeling my gut. I deadened myself."
I did. I feel like I did. And then when the studio I managed, when the owner's like, "You're never going to make more money doing it yourself than with us," I said,
"Yay!"
I said,
"The yoga's still working."
I said, "See you later." And I opened up the studio on the Lower East Side. I opened it up because there was nothing else on the Lower East Side. I walked around.
And it's because it also was Lower East Side.
Because it's Low and East. Come on. I don't have a choice. There is no choice. I had to. I opened it up and I basically kind of did it the same way that I did the restaurant business. If you could not afford it, if it was not accessible, I found some people who would pay for you. We had different kinds of rates. It was like an airplane. Everyone paid something different, but it all worked out. And
I like that you basically built it yourself in Lower East Side in early 2000s. And...
Shh, don't tell anybody.
Oh, yeah.
Shh.
Build it yourself like you put a lot of, passion into it.
Keep that on the down low. I don't know if they're going to check the permits. But yeah, I was that girl who's like, I don't know, I'll bring in a truck and a crane and I'll just park it on Allen Street in the Lower East Side. And that was in 2004. No one was paying that much attention and just put everything through the windows.
And I mean, the studio is still there. I mean, we went there today. It's pretty awesome,
What do you mean? The studio's not going anywhere.
Yeah, exactly. So
that studio should never have existed. The rent, the challenges of the Bikram name, the carpet, the 90 minutes in New York. That studio should never have lasted this long.
Yet
here we are. And so what I wanted to do was I kind of wanted to create something again like I did in the restaurant business. And I was just like, how do I do this? And I feel the quote, wiser I get, the less I'm like, I'm going to stand up for that one person. I'm going to create something that talks to everybody. And that's where Night Sweats was born. And what I did was I just every first Friday of the month, I opened up the studio, made it a little, quote, less rules, less rigid. You could wear whatever you wanted. There was no lights. I put hot pink lights in the ceiling. I played loud music, and I used no voice at all. So it was all heart. It was all passion. It was all feeling each other. And
so how would it work? Like you would lead the class and they would follow you? Or?
There used to be like, for lack of a better word, I would say a podium, a throne that we would stand on in Bikram yoga, because it was just talking and there was no demonstration. So we would stand on this big throne and just talk. And so so then I would just stand on the box and just do the moves and see what happens. And if you didn't like the moves, you got to dance. If you didn't like to dance, you had to do the moves. You move with each other. But the best part about it was I'm not a trustafarian. I don't have a wad of cash in my pocket, and I'm like, let's just do this. Let's just do it. And I picked out basically like a jam box, like a mixtape. That's pretty much how long ago. Threw up some pink lights in the ceiling myself and just started inviting people and saying it was $10 and all the money was going to go to the Lower East Side Girls Club.
Did you say Lady Gaga would come dance?
Lady Gaga would not come and dance at the Night Sweats, but she was a student of mine when she was Stephanie. And then when she became Gaga, she came back once to have a public class. And then after that, we took off and did private lessons. And I have been lucky enough, I don't believe in luck, but I've been lucky enough to travel the world with Gaga in a very compassionate way. And really, and that's when I felt the compassion and self-compassion strong, because if you are a person who has worked, whether you work, deserve, and do have money and access and resources at your tip, and you still feel like we do, that you are challenged and that you have a hard time talking nicely to yourself, or any of us do, it really to me was very significant of how that room brings the playing field and creates equanimity in every way. You can't buy your way out of that room. You can't tell someone else to do it, but you can borrow energy from someone in that room, and in the hopes that you give it back, and it does happen that way.
I often feel like, I was thinking about it like this past few days, like yoga is sort of like an international language, kind of like music, It's like wherever you go in the world, I can just drop into an Ashtanga class, for example, in my case, and just do it. And everybody understands what's going on. Same thing with music.
It is the international language. When the music came out, all three of us just went.
Yeah.
We just went. And I do have a funny joke about that. Like recently I started dating only women who do not speak my language, because I feel the most confusing times are with people who speak the same language. So I'd be texting, I'd be like, "Oh, I'm missing and loving you so hard," and she texts me back, "Yeah, I'm hardly loving you," and I'm like, "No, that's not." And I'm like, "Oh no, that's exactly what I meant. Let's move on. Let's keep going." So I definitely
fantastic.
I definitely understand more clearly now. You got to talk. You got to talk out loud. You got to talk to yourself, or else you're going to have misinterpretations, and you're going to love hard, and hardly anyone's going to love you. And that is really what yoga's brought to me is you do not know what someone's interpretation of what you're saying or feeling. Yeah. You just don't. You may think you do by the look they give you, the open hands, the closed hands, the what's going on with their foot, why they're picking up their leg that way. We have no idea what people are interpreting how you are. And that's when I had to get really, I think, honest with myself about what was I here to do on this planet, and what am I here to do, and who to talk to, or who to be with, and who to ask questions, and who to love hard, and who to hardly love. And it's because we are really, like I've said, I've been so lucky that I've experienced the people in underserved neighborhoods, and people who could buy those neighborhoods.
Yeah.
And the people that could buy them know that that's not going to solve the problem. Yeah. And so there are those, like Gaga, there are those people up there that are giving themselves passionately, compassionately, and taking risks. And also just evening out the playing field.
Yeah.
Evening out the playing field.
Cool. This is what you say about the underserved neighborhoods and the girls' club that you just mentioned a few minutes ago. So it'd be nice to talk about that. So I was thinking maybe let's just take another couple minutes break, and then we go for season 3. And we'll talk about that because that's I think a super interesting thing that you do as well. And I love it. Well, thank you so much. Tricia, thank you for this. This is pretty awesome, actually. Thanks, Alexis. So, just a couple of boring things. You can message us on yogisontheroad@gmail.com. You can follow us on Instagram at yogis.ontheroad. That's it, because it's Instagram. And Tricia, where can people follow you? Or see you, or see what you do, see your studio.
Yeah, okay. Let's do all the boring stuff, because I'm so terrible at that. You can follow me at Tricia Donegan. My website's going to be coming out soon. It's TriciaDoneganNYC.com. I don't know who bought Tricia Donegan. Come on, I'm not Tom Cruise.
Come on.
Hey, you. But I've rebranded the hot yoga studio in the Lower East Side to Fierce Grace, which has been an amazing partnership with the three of us to keep the studio open, and not only to bring you an extended expansion of the yoga that perhaps you started with, the roots of it. It's really an incredible studio. I'm really proud to be a part of it and to bring it to the U.S. We're the only U.S. studio that exists out of the Fierce Grace.
Awesome.
We're going to be doing our first teacher training in May.
That's pretty cool. Yeah. It's super rock and roll. I love the energy. I think it's perfect for that area as well.
It is. It's Lower East. It's I've loved all the shout outs and whatever can make this more accessible, but when I was in Rolling Stones, that was cool. That was cool.
Cool. Well, thank you guys. See you in a few minutes, and let's talk about that. Thank you.
Thank you.